Hello guys and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm gonna show you how to make a barrel-aged beer. We're talking all the way from crushed grains to finished barrel-aged results. This is also one of the main reasons why this video is so delayed, because this stuff takes a lot of time. As I've mentioned before, I love barrel-aged barley wines, and one of my favorites are the A Deal with the Devil series from Anchorage Brewing. If you had one, you know the intensity it has. Strong barrel presence, sticky sweet, and is packed with flavors like raisins, caramel, figs, vanilla, oak, and of course bourbon. Every time I try a big barrel-aged beer I love, I always do a final gravity reading. You know, for science, and of course inspiration for my own brews. And as you can see, this one has a final gravity of 1050. So far I have done 8 barrel-aged beers, 1 imperial stout and the rest, you guessed it, different kinds of barley wine. But I also got this little thing I'm gonna talk more about later in the video. With the exception from my first barrel project, all the barrels I've used has been bought from Midwest Barrel Company, and because of my dedication I had the honor of getting invited to do an online collab with them. I brew the beer and they provide me with the barrel. For this project I chose to brew something called Munichwine. It's pretty much a regular barley wine, but all of the base malt is Munich malt. When it comes to the barrel, I went with a freshly emptied rum barrel from Corsair distillery. This will be my first project with a rum barrel, so I'm super excited to try the result when it's ready. Anyways, it's time to get this show on the road, so here we go. For the Munichwine brew water, I adjusted it to 160 ppm chloride and 80 ppm sulfate using calcium chloride and gypsum. Since I'm using some specialty malt in this brew, I ended up with my desired mash pH of 5.2 without using any lactic acid. The grain bill is 58.5% light Munich malt, 3.8% crystal dark and 1.9% special B. Yeah, I know, that's only 64.2% in total, but don't worry, I'll get to the rest soon. Use some rice hulls to make the mashing step a bit easier, and remember, always stir well to get rid of all the dough balls in the mash. You want that sugar in your wort and not wasted. I also use something called tree sign that will help increase the efficiency and help with the fermentation. Do a 90-minute mash to get as much sugar as you can out of the grains. I ended up with a 86.8% mash efficiency for this brew. The last step is to sparge and remove the grains. This is the time most people do a double mash, but I'm using dry malt extract to save time. And a lot of it. 28.3% of all the fermentable sugar in this beer is malt extract. It can be difficult to stir everything in before the boil, but everything will dissolve when the boil starts. And for the love of the unholy god, turn off the pump while doing this. I forgot to do this and will face the consequences later. Ugh. After everything is added, it's time to add more sugar to this beast of a beer. For this brew I used a mix between regular white sugar, brown sugar and dark syrup. Add the sugar and stir well to make sure that it's dissolved. Sticky is definitely the word during this brew day, just like every time I brew a monster brew like this, but it's all worth it in the end. And the reason why I add all the sugar at the beginning and not at the end of the boil is because I want to caramelize everything in the long boil. Alright, it's time to boil the hell out of this thing. And don't forget to add some anti-foam. It will definitely be helpful during the aggressive long boil. And why the hell did I use this dropper thing for a liquid this thick? The boil time for this beer was 6 hours. When it was 100 minutes left of the boil, I added 100 grams of Columbus, giving it an IBU of 35. Add a hefty amount of yeast nutrients and whirlflock when it's 10 minutes left of the boil. And since the Brew Tools pump got clogged with dry malt extract, I had to MacGyver this solution with my washing pump to be able to cool down the wort and transfer it to the fermenter. Cool down the wort to 18 degrees Celsius. Nottingham is my go-to yeast for big beers, and I used 11 packs for this brew. A big beer like this needs a lot of oxygen, so don't be afraid to aerate it for several minutes. Transfer the wort to a fermenter and make sure to have a lot of headspace. If you're filling it with too much, have fun cleaning within few days, and always use a blow-off tube. Add the yeast to the wort and be glad that the long brew day is finally over. I blended the wort 50-50 with water to be able to do a reading, and the original gravity was 1176.
24 hours later.
The Nottingham yeast is already working hard. You can see the temperature steps in the full recipe that I'll link in the description. After about 8 days I experienced some sluggish fermentation, so I added some AMG to fix the problem. The next day the fermentation was super aggressive again. 23 days later the fermentation stopped and the final gravity was 1052, making it 16.3%. When it comes to barrel aging, don't be afraid to play around with blending. This beer right here is my project called Hodgepodge, where I got to use my leftover strong beers. I mixed them all together and filled up a maple rye whiskey barrel to make an interesting, well, hodgepodge. The blend in this beer is 30% black barley wine, 25% old ale, 20% wheat wine, 20% imperial stout and 5% bourbon barrel-aged barley wine. After the barrel aging, it was conditioned on homemade maple syrup, so a shout out to Mike in New Hampshire, and a dash of freshly brewed barley wine. It became one of the best beers I have ever made. This is also a great way to be able to use bigger barrels if you're using a smaller brew setup. Blend the beers, fill up the barrel and let the magic happen. My source of barrels is Midwest Barrel Company, and I'm not just saying that because I'm doing this collab with them. They're guaranteed freshly emptied, and that's exactly what you want for your barrel project. But be advised, if you live outside of the US, shipping is pretty steep. Thanks USPS. Another way is to ask your local distilleries if they have any small barrels you can buy. When you get the barrel, you should do an inspection to make sure that it isn't any damage on the barrel. Luckily, barrels are very solid, so they can withstand the shipping without any problems. The preparation is really simple. You just need to keep the wood hydrated until it's ready to be filled, which should happen as quickly as possible. Spray the outside of the barrel with hot water daily to keep the wood hydrated. I also do a method called head swelling. Just set the barrel standing and fill the barrel head with hot water. You will probably see some light bubbling in the beginning, but if the barrel is fresh, it should stop pretty quickly. Let it sit overnight and do the same thing on the other side of the barrel. If you experience bubbling that is more intense, I recommend to use boiling water instead. And when it comes to spirit barrels, never fill the inside of the barrel. You want to keep those lovely flavors in there. Alright, it's time to fill the barrel with your liquid gold. To remove the wooden bung, drill a screw into it and pull it off with the hammer. And don't forget to smell that wonderful aroma the barrel will give your beer. Purge the barrel with CO2 before filling. When you're ready to fill, spray the bunghole with star sand and start transferring. The leftovers you see in the line there is from when I transferred the beer from mechanical to keg, so don't worry. And just to be clear, fill the barrel with uncarbonated beer. And if you see some chunks floating in your beer, don't be scared. That's just wooden flavor crystals from the inside of the barrel, and they will drop during the aging. Fill the barrel all the way to the top. As you can see here, the CO2 pressure was a bit high, so there was some foam. A better example is the clip from my last barrel project. Nice and easy with no foaming. You can also fill the barrel straight from the fermenter as well, but remember, always purge the barrel with CO2 before filling. Plug the barrel and let the waiting game begin. Patience is the key for these projects. So, how long should you age your beer? Frankly, that's all up to you and what you prefer. Personally, I love beers that got extended barrel time, and I'm heavily influenced by breweries like Side Project, Anchorage and Fremont. What I discovered is that the sweeter the beer is, the longer barrel time it can handle, even when we're talking about smaller barrels. When I brewed my first batch of 16% ABV barley wine, it had a final gravity of 1032. I aged that beer for 13 months in a 15-gallon barrel, and it was super boozy and sharp. I ended up adding a syrup blend of demerara sugar and maltodextrin to backsweeten it and to give it a bit more body. Luckily, that saved the beer and it turned out great. If the beer had a lower ABV, it might have worked without the backsweetening. My newest batch of the 16% ABV barley wine had a final gravity of 1072 and was aged for 12 months and 17 days in a 15-gallon barrel, and guess what? I could have easily aged that beer for several months more without it being too much. So, challenge accepted for a future project. This is also the barley wine I'm gonna transfer and bottle in this video. But when it comes to aging, just sample your beer now and then to get an idea of how the result will be. To sample your beer, you could use something called a wine thief. Just make sure to spray the bunghole with star sand before popping it. You should also purge the barrel with CO2 before plugging it again. Another method is to use something called a winning nail. I haven't tried it myself since I keep the barrel so close to the floor, but here is a clip from Midwest Barrel Company on how you do it. Just sanitize the drill bit, stainless steel nail, and the area of the barrel you're sampling from. Drill a hole in the barrel and have the nail ready to plug the hole with. Insert the stainless steel nail into the barrel head. When you're ready to sample, just sanitize, pull out the nail, fill the sample glass and plug the barrel. Oh, and before we move on to the next chapter, even if a barrel is hydrated properly before use, small leaks can and probably will happen. But sometimes it can leak more than expected, like this side of the barrel. I was a bit sloppy with the hydration since I was eager to fill the barrel, and this is the result. Sticky bourbon-soaked barley wine toffee, anyone? So the lesson is, don't store your barrel on a surface that can't handle liquids. Or toffee. The day is finally here and it's time to transfer the beer from the barrel. Before the transfer, spray the bunghole with star sand. There will be some loss of beer during the barrel aging, and it's called the Angel's Share. I really recommend that you transfer your beer to a keg and force carbonate, because all of the yeast is dead at this point. To transfer, I use a barrel tool that I bought from NorCal Brewing Solution. It uses CO2 to push the beer out of the barrel and into the keg. And it's probably not necessary to say this, but sanitize everything that the beer will be in contact with. Although the barrel transfer tool is a handy thing, it can be a nightmare if there are small leaks in the barrel. As you can see, the CO2 escapes through these cracks, which means that you will use a lot of CO2 to transfer this thing. I managed to run out of CO2 in the tank, so I had to use a siphon for the rest of the beer. Next time I will combine the transfer tool with a super sucker from Keglan or something like that. When the transfer is done, purge the keg with CO2 and force carb it lightly. You don't want to ruin the beer with too much carbonation. The beer is carbonated and the only thing left now is to enjoy the goods. But if you want to go the extra mile, like I always do, it's time to bottle this beer so you can share it with your friends and family. I bottle all my beers with the Blitzmann beer gun. Make sure that the beer is ice cold before starting. Purge the bottle with CO2 and fill them with low pressure. I also purge the top with CO2 before capping it. And you bet your ass we drank the leftovers in there. This is liquid gold. If you're a label kind of guy, add labels to the beer. Half-assing it by giving away bottles with no information on them should be a crime. The final step is to wax the bottles. Heat the wax on low heat until everything has melted. Dip and roll the bottles, then let them stand upright to get that runny effect. Do I spend way too much time on the look of my beers? You bet your ass I do, but I love doing it. And if you like what you've seen so far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Done and done. We finally reached the end and it's time to taste the finished result. And how is it? Unholy mother of God. It's thick, sweet and packed with flavors of raisin, toffee, roasted nuts, milk chocolate, burnt sugar, vanilla, dates, charred oak and strong bourbon. It was so good that I even forgot to smile while filming this. So until next time, SKÅL!